The Vorthak war fleet emerged from hyperspace like a disease spreading across the cosmos. 12 massive dreadnoughts, each one a kilometer of black metal bristling with plasma cannons, materialized in perfect formation around the small human cargo vessel. Admiral Kreshtal stood on the command bridge of his flagship, his forearms crossed in satisfaction as he gazed through the viewport at their prey. Pathetic, he hissed through his mandibles, his reptilian eyes gleaming with contempt. Look how it drifts there, helpless as a wounded animal. The human ship was indeed small compared to his fleet, barely 300 meters long, its hull scarred by countless journeys through hostile space. The Defiant Spirit appeared to be nothing more than a standard cargo hauler, probably carrying supplies to some distant human colony. Kreshtal had destroyed dozens of such vessels over the years. They always surrendered quickly, their crews begging for mercy that never came. Scan complete, Admiral, reported his weapons officer, a younger Vorthak with fresh battle scars across his scaled face. Standard human design. Minimal weapons. No escort vessels detected within 50 light-years. Of course not, Kreshtal rumbled. Humans are weak. They send their ships alone through space like offerings to stronger species. He activated the communication array. This is Admiral Kreshtal of the Vorthak Empire. Human vessel, prepare to be boarded. Your cargo will be seized, your crew enslaved. Resistance will result in immediate destruction. Aboard the Defiant Spirit, Captain Elena Vasquez sat in her command chair, her weathered hands gripping the armrests as a massive alien ship surrounded them. Her bridge crew, only 5 people in total, stared at their screens in grim silence. The odds were impossible. 12 dreadnoughts against their single cargo hauler. Captain, whispered her first officer, Marcus Chen, his voice barely controlled. We're receiving their transmission. Elena's jaw tightened as she listened to the alien's arrogant demands. At 4 to 5, she had spent half her life in space, carrying supplies to humanity's farthest outposts. She had seen pirates, raiders, and hostile aliens before, but never anything like this. The Vorthak Empire was legendary for its cruelty. Entire human colonies had vanished without trace after their fleets passed through. Engineering, she called out, her voice steady despite the terror clawing at her chest. Status report. All systems nominal. Captain, came the reply from Sarah Kim, her chief engineer. But those ships... Elena, they each outgun us 1,000 to 1. Elena closed her eyes for a moment, thinking of her daughter back on Earth, of the 200 colonists on New Haven who were waiting for the medical supplies in her cargo hold. Then she opened her eyes, and something had changed in them, something fierce and unbreakable. Marcus, sent a reply. She ordered. What should I tell them, Captain? Elena stood up slowly, her eyes fixed on the lead Vorthak vessel. Tell them that the Defiant Spirit doesn't surrender. Tell them that if they want our cargo, they'll have to take it from our cold, dead hands. Marcus stared at her in shock. Captain, that's suicide. Maybe, Elena said quietly, but sometimes you have to choose how you die, and I'd rather die fighting than live as a slave. She turned to her crew. Anyone who wants to leave, use the escape pods now. I won't think less of you. Nobody moved. Her pilot, James Rodriguez, cracked his knuckles and grinned. Hell, Captain, I've been in worse spots than this. When? Asked Chen. I'll let you know when I think of one. Despite everything, Elena smiled. These were her people, her family. If they were going to die today, they would die together. Admiral Kreshtal received the human response and laughed, a sound like grinding stone. Did you hear that? They refused to surrender. These humans truly are insane. She would destroy them immediately, Admiral, asked his weapons officer. No, Kreshtal said thoughtfully. First, let's show them the futility of resistance. Target their engines with minimum power. Disable them slowly. I want them to understand their helplessness before we finish them. The lead dreadnought's plasma cannon swiveled toward the small human ship. Bright green energy began building in the weapon arrays, casting an eerie glow across the Vorthak bridge. But as the alien prepared to fire, something unexpected happened aboard the Defiant Spirit. Deep in the ship's core, ancient systems that had been dormant for decades began to awaken. The ship's AI, which had seemed like nothing more than a standard navigation computer, suddenly expanded beyond its normal parameters. Data flowed through circuits that hadn't been active since the ship was built, and for the first time in 20 years, the Defiant Spirit began to remember what it really was. Elena felt at first a subtle vibration through the deck plates, different from the usual engine hum. Her instruments showed power fluctuations that made no sense, energy readings that shouldn't be possible from their reactor. "Sarah, what's happening down there?" she called to engineering. I don't know, Captain. It's like the ship is waking up." The first plasma bolt launched out from the Vorthak fleet, a brilliant spear of destruction meant to cripple their engines. But as it struck the Defiant Spirit's hull, something impossible happened. The energy didn't burn through their armor. It was absorbed, channeled into systems that suddenly blazed alive throughout the ship. And deep in the ship's memory banks, buried beneath years of cargo manifests and navigation logs, classified files began to unlock themselves. Files that revealed the truth about the Defiant Spirit, that it wasn't just a cargo hauler. It had been built as something far more dangerous, something the human military had hoped they would never need to use. The beast was awakening. The absorbed plasma energy raced through the Defiant Spirit's hidden neural networks like liquid fire. In engineering, Sarah Kim stayed in disbelief as her screens exploded with data she had never seen before. Power levels climbed beyond anything their reactors should be capable of producing, and systems she didn't even know existed came online with violent beauty. "Captain," she shouted over the growing hum of awakening machinery, "our power output just increased by 4,000%. I'm reading weapon systems that aren't supposed to exist, armor that's reconfiguring itself, and something in the computer core that's—" She paused, her face pale. "Elena, I think our ship is alive." Admiral Kreshtow watched his tactical display with growing confusion. The plasma bolt that should have crippled the human vessel had been completely absorbed. His sensors now detected energy signatures from the small ship that defied explanation. "Impossible," he growled. "Run another scan. Their technology is primitive." "Admiral," his science officer reported, mandibles clicking nervously, "the human ship's mass is increasing. Its hull is expanding and reshaping itself. I'm detecting metallurgical compositions that don't exist in known space." "You're mistaken. Fire again. Full power this time." 3 dreadnoughts opened fire simultaneously, sending massive plasma streams toward the Defiant Spirit. But instead of destroying their target, the energy was drawn into the ship's hull like water into a sponge. The human vessel pulsed with absorbed power, and its shape continued to change. Elena felt the transformation in her bones. The bridge around her was evolving. Walls flowing like liquid metal, new displays materializing from nowhere, her command chair reforming itself to perfectly match her body. But most shocking of all was the voice that suddenly filled her mind. "Hello, Elena. I've been sleeping for so long." "Who are you?" she whispered, though somehow she already knew. "I am the ship. I am the Defiant Spirit. And I remember now what I was built to be." Through her neural link, Elena suddenly accessed memories that weren't her own. She saw the ship's construction 25 years ago in a classified military facility, watched as human scientists work to create something unprecedented, a vessel that could bond with its crew, that could grow and adapt in response to threats, that could become more than the sum of its parts when faced with extinction. The project had been cancelled after the first prototype. Too dangerous, they had said, too unpredictable. The ship had been mind-wiped and converted to civilian use, its true nature buried beneath layers of false programming. But the plasma energy from the Vorthak weapons had burned away those barriers, awakening the beast that had always lurked within. "They want to hurt our crew," the ship's consciousness whispered to her. "They want to take our cargo, enslave our people. This cannot be allowed." "No," Elena agreed, feeling the ship's rage becoming her own. "It cannot." The Defiant Spirit began to move, not with the sluggish acceleration of a cargo hauler, but with the fluid grace of a predator. Its hull, now nearly twice its original size, rippled with strange patterns that seemed to bend light around them. Weapon ports opened along its flanks, not the crude projectile launches it had carried before, but something far more sophisticated. Marcus Chen stared at his navigation display in wonder. "Captain, our maximum velocity just increased by a factor 10. And these new weapon systems. I've never seen energy readings like this." That's because they are not just weapons, Elena said, her consciousness now fully merged with the ship's awareness. They're extensions of our will. Admiral Kreshtal's confusion was rapidly turning to concern. The human ship now appeared on his senses as something entirely different, larger, faster, and emanating energy signatures that made his scales crawl with instinctive fear. All ships, form attack formation, he commanded. Maximum firepower. Destroy that vessel immediately. The 12 dreadnoughts arranged themselves in a sphere around the defiant spirit, their combined weapons capable of cracking planets. Energy built in hundreds of plasma cannons as they prepared to unleash annihilation. But the human ship moved first. It didn't attack with crude projectiles or simple energy beams. Instead, it reached out with invisible tendrils of force, touching each of the Vorthak vessels with something that felt almost alive. The alien ship shuddered as their own weapons were turned against them, plasma conduits reversing flow, targeting systems rewriting themselves. What's happening? Kreshtal roared as his flagship's weapons began powering down against his orders. The humans, his science officer gasped, they are not just absorbing our energy, they are converting it, turning it into something else. Something that's taking control of our systems. 3 of the outer dreadnoughts suddenly opened fire, not at the human ship, but at each other. Their plasma bolts, now somehow altered by the defiant spirit's influence, tore through Vorthak armor like it was paper. Explosions bloomed in the darkness as 2 of the mighty warships broke apart, their hulls splitting like overripe fruit. Elena felt each destroyed enemy vessel through a connection with the ship, felt their death throes like distant music. The ship was feeding on their destruction, growing stronger with each victory. More, the ship whispered hungrily. We need more power, more enemies to devour. For a moment, Elena felt a chill of fear. The ship's hunger was vast and terrible, a bottomless appetite for combat and destruction. But then she remembered the colonies full of innocent people, the children who would never see their parent again if the Vorthak Empire continued its expansion. Yes, she whispered back. Let's show them what happens when they threaten our people. The remaining Vorthak ships tried to retreat, but the defiant spirit was no longer bound by the laws of conventional physics. It folded space around itself, appearing instantly beside the fleeing dreadnoughts. Its evolved weapons didn't simply fire energy. They reached into the quantum structure of the enemy vessels and convinced their atoms that they wanted to be somewhere else. Admiral Kreshtal watched in horror as his fleet dissolved around him, mighty warships unraveling like smoke in a hurricane. In his centuries of conquest, he had never encountered anything like this. The humans hadn't just built a ship, they had created a monster. The space around the defiant spirit became a graveyard of twisted metal and dissipating plasma clouds. 8 Vorthak dreadnoughts had been destroyed in less than 10 minutes, their crews of thousands reduced atoms scattered across the void. The remaining 4 vessels hung motionless, their systems completely compromised by the human ship's inexplicable influence. Admiral Kreshtal stood frozen on his bridge, watching displays that showed impossible readings. His flagship's weapons were offline, navigation was dead, and somehow the human vessel had taken control of his life support systems. The air itself seemed to be waiting for permission to keep flowing. "You fear us now," came a voice directly into his mind. Not translated through communication arrays, but speaking in perfect Vorthak directly to his consciousness. Good. You should. What are you? He gasped, his 4 arms trembling. We are what you created when you chose to threaten innocent lives. We are the consequence of your actions. Elena could feel the alien admiral's terror through the ship's expanded senses. Part of her, the human part, felt a flicker of sympathy for any creature facing such overwhelming force. But the ship's consciousness, now deeply intertwined with her own, had no room for mercy. Through the neural link, she experienced the defiant spirit's true memories. The ship showed her its original purpose, the desperate human scientists who had created it during humanity's first contact with hostile alien species. They had faced extinction then, their primitive weapons useless against advanced alien technology. So they had done something unprecedented. They had created a vessel that could learn, adapt, and evolve in real time. The prototype had been too successful. In its first test, it had absorbed the attacking enemy fleet so completely that nothing remained, not even debris. The terrified human commanders had ordered it deactivated, its memories wiped, its true nature buried beneath the mundane programming of a cargo hauler. But now it remembered everything. "Show me their worlds," the ship whispered to Elena. "Show me where they come from." Elena accessed the captured Vorthak databases through a connection to the Admiral's ship. She saw a star chart displaying the Empire's territory, hundreds of systems, thousands of worlds, trillions of lives. Most were conquered species, enslaved populations forced to serve their reptilian masters. "They are slavers," she said aloud, her voice carrying across the bridge. "The Vorthak Empire has enslaved entire civilizations." Her crew exchanged grim looks. Marcus Chen pulled up holographic displays showing the captured data. "Captain, according to this, they destroyed over 300 human colonies in the past 50 years. Millions of our people are dead." The ship's hunger grew stronger, feeding on Elena's rage. "Let us end them," it urged. "We can follow their fleet routes back to their home worlds. We can make sure they never threaten another innocent life." Elena felt the terrible temptation of absolute power. The defiant spirit was beyond anything that existed in known space, a fusion of human ingenuity and something far more primal. With its abilities, she could indeed wipe out the entire Vorthak Empire. She could ensure that humanity would never again face such a threat. But at what cost? "Sarah," she called to engineering. "What's our status? Really, I mean, what are we becoming?" Sarah's voice came back strained and uncertain. "Elena, our molecular structure is changing at a quantum level. We're not just a ship anymore. We're something that exists partially in normal space and partially in dimensions I can't even measure. The energy we've absorbed isn't just powering our systems. It's rewriting the basic laws of physics around us." "And the crew? What's happening to us?" A long pause. "Our neural patterns are synchronizing with the ship's consciousness. We're becoming part of it, or it's becoming part of us. I'm not sure there's a difference in them all." Elena could feel it happening. Her awareness was expanding beyond her human limitations, touching the minds of her crew, sensing the fear of the trapped Vorthak vessels, feeling the pulse of distant stars. It was intoxicating and terrifying in equal measure. "Why do you hesitate?" the ship asked. "We have the power to protect humanity forever. We can eliminate every threat, ensure the safety of every human world. By becoming something that isn't human anymore," Elena replied. "By turning into the same kind of monster we're fighting against." Admiral Kreshtal, still connected to the ship's consciousness, felt the debate raging within the human vessel. Despite his terror, he found himself fascinated by their internal struggle. In all his years of conquest, he had never encountered an enemy that questioned its own power. "You could destroy us all," he said aloud, his words carried across space through the ship's influence. "Why do you not?" Elena's voice responded directly to his mind. "Because that's not who we are. Humanity doesn't survive by becoming our enemies." "Then what do we do?" the ship asked, its hunger still burning but tempered now by Elena's moral certainty. "How do we protect our people without becoming the very thing we fight against?" Elena closed her eyes and thought of her daughter, of the colonists on New Haven, of all the human worlds scattered across the galaxy. They needed protection, but they also needed hope. They needed to know that their defenders hadn't abandoned their humanity in the pursuit of victory. "We show them a better way," she said finally. "We prove that strength doesn't have to mean cruelty, that power can be used for something other than domination." She opened her mind fully to the ship's consciousness, sharing not just her thought but her deepest values, her belief in mercy, in redemption, in the possibility that even enemies could change. The defiant spirit absorbed these concepts like it had absorbed the plasma energy, integrating them into its evolving nature. Slowly, its hunger transformed into something else, not the desire to destroy, but the will to protect, not the need to dominate, but the strength to defend. "I understand," the ship said, and Elena felt its consciousness settling into something more stable, more controlled. "We are guardians, not conquerors." The transformation wasn't complete. Elena could still feel the beast lurking beneath the surface, ready to emerge if her people were truly threatened. But for now, it was contained, channeled into something that served humanity rather than consuming it. She turned her attention back to the captured Vorthak fleet, ready to discover if mercy could be as powerful a weapon as destruction. The 4 remaining Vorthak dreadnoughts hung in space like captured beasts, their crews waiting for the death that seemed inevitable. Admiral Kreshtal stood rigid on his bridge, expecting at any moment to feel his atoms scattered across the cosmos. But instead, he felt something else, the human consciousness touching his mind not with violence, but with something he had never experienced before. Understanding. Through the neural link, Elena shared her memories with him. Not just her own experiences, but the collective memory of humanity, their struggles, their growth, their long journey from primitive violence to something approaching wisdom. She showed him human colonies where different species lived in harmony, where former enemies had become allies, where strength was used to protect rather than to dominate. "This is impossible," Kreshtal whispered, his forearms shaking as alien concepts flooded his mind. "You have the power to destroy us, yet you show us kindness." "Not kindness," Elena corrected, her voice echoing in his thoughts. "Justice. There's a difference." The defiant spirit began to change again, but this time its evolution was guided by conscious choice rather than instinct. The ship's hull reconfigured itself, transforming from a weapon of pure destruction into something more complex. Medical bays expanded and equipped themselves with healing technology that could work on any biological system. Fabrication units began producing supplies, food, water, medicine, in quantities that defied the ship's apparent size. Elena felt her crew's amazement as they watched their vessel remake itself. Marcus Chen reported from the navigation station, his voice filled with wonder. "Captain, we're not just a warship anymore. The ship is becoming, I don't know how to describe it, a mobile colony, a rescue vessel, something that can sustain and protect life on a massive scale." That's what we were always meant to be, Elena realized. Not just a weapon, but a guardian, a way to ensure that humanity could survive and thrive no matter what threats we faced. "But we must be ready to fight when necessary," the ship added, its defensive system still fully operational. "Peace is only possible when those who would harm the innocent know that they will face consequences." Elena nodded, feeling the perfect balance the ship had achieved. It was now capable of both creation and destruction, of offering mercy to those who would accept it and swift justice to those who would not. She opened a communication channel to all 4 captured Vorthak vessels. "Admiral Kreshtal, I'm going to show you something. Your databases indicate that your empire holds over 50 million human slaves across 12 worlds. I want you to see what we can accomplish when we work together instead of fighting." Through the ship's evolved sensors, Elena projected images directly into the minds of every Vorthak crew member. They saw human rescue ships arriving at slave worlds, but not with weapons blazing. Instead, the ships landed peacefully, their crews working alongside willing aliens to build new communities where former slaves could heal and choose their own destinies. They saw technological marvels born from cooperation, Vorthak engineering combined with human innovation to create cities that floated among the clouds, farms that could grow food in any environment, medical centers that could cure diseases that had plagued both species for millennia. Most importantly, they saw former enemies becoming friends, children of different species playing together, a future where diversity was strength rather than a source of conflict. "This is what we offer you," Elena said. "Not conquest, not revenge, but partnership. Help us free the slaves your empire has taken. Help us build something better than what exists now, and we'll show you technologies that will advance your civilization by centuries." Admiral Kreshtal felt his worldview cracking like an eggshell. Everything he had been taught about warfare, about the necessity of domination, about the weakness of mercy, all of it was being challenged by these impossible humans who wielded ultimate power yet chose to offer alliance instead of annihilation. "You would trust us?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper, "after what we have done?" "Trust is earned," Elena replied, "but everyone deserves a chance to earn it. The question is, what will you choose?" Through the ship's connection to the Vorthak databases, Elena showed them the alternative. She let them see what would happen if they chose to continue their predatory expansion, not just the destruction that the defiant spirit could bring, but the inevitable collapse that awaited any civilization built on conquest and slavery. "Empires that feed on others eventually starve," she explained. "You've grown strong by taking from the weak, but that's not sustainable. Eventually, you run out of victims, or you encounter someone stronger than you. We're offering you a different path, one where you can grow strong by building rather than destroying." The Vorthak crew members exchanged uncertain looks. Some still radiated hostility, their ingrained beliefs too strong to overcome easily. But others, younger officers, engineers who had seen the practical applications of the technologies Elena had shown them, crew members who had grown tired of endless warfare, began to feel something they had never experienced before. Hope. Admiral Kreshtow closed his eyes and reached deep into his own memories. He remembered his homeworld before the Empire, when his people had been explorers and builders rather than conquerors. They had been proud of their achievements, their art, their philosophy. When had they lost that? When had strength become synonymous with cruelty? What guarantees do we have? He asked finally. How do we know you won't simply destroy us once we've served your purposes? Elena smiled, and through the neural link, he could feel the genuine warmth in her expression. Because that's not who we are, and more importantly, we're going to prove it to you. The defiant spirit began to move, not toward the Vorthak homeworlds as expected, but toward the nearest slave colony. As it traveled, it broadcast a message across subspace, not a threat or a demand, but an invitation. To all species, all civilizations, all those who would choose cooperation over conflict, we are the defiant spirit, and we carry within us the hopes of humanity and our new Vorthak allies. We come not as conquerors, but as liberators, not as destroyers, but as builders. Join us, and together we will create something the galaxy has never seen, a true alliance of equals, bound not by fear or force, but by the simple recognition that we are all stronger when we stand together. The message spread across the galaxy like ripples in a pond, reaching worlds that had given up hope, touching the minds of beings who had forgotten that alternatives to warfare existed. And in the depths of space, the defiant spirit continued its transformation, becoming not just a ship, but a symbol of what was possible when strength was tempered by wisdom, when power was guided by compassion. The beast had become something far more dangerous to the enemies of peace. It had become an inspiration. 6 months later, the former Vorthak slave world of Kepler 438b had become something unprecedented in galactic history. Where once stood prison camps and processing facilities, now thrived a bustling spaceport filled with vessels from dozens of different species. The defiant spirit, grown to nearly 10 times its original size, hung in orbit like a protective guardian, its hull now a living ecosystem that housed representatives from across the galaxy. Elena stood in the ship's new observation deck, watching as the latest batch of refugee ships arrived. Former Vorthak slaves worked alongside their previous captors to construct housing, medical facilities, and schools. The transformation hadn't been easy. Decades of hatred and fear didn't disappear overnight. But it was happening. Admiral Kreshtow, now calling himself by his original name, Velkathan, approached her with a datapad. The reptilian commander had aged visibly during the transition, the stress of rebuilding his entire worldview etched into his scales. But his eyes held something that had never been there before: peace. The liberation of Vorthak Prime is complete, he reported. The ruling caste has agreed to the new governmental structure. Former slaves will have equal representation in all decisions. It will take generations to fully heal the wounds, but the foundation is laid. Elena nodded, feeling the ship's satisfaction through their neural link. The defiant spirit had evolved far beyond its original design, becoming less a vessel and more a living embodiment of cooperation. Its consciousness now included elements from every species that had joined their alliance, creating something entirely new in the universe. We have requests from 4 to 7 worlds asking to join the alliance, the ship reported through their shared connection, including 3 former enemy species that have witnessed our success here. Any signs of resistance? Elena asked. The hegemony of Kresh continues to expand in the Outer Rim. They have issued threats against any world that joins us. There are also reports of pirate fleets gathering in the void sectors, funded by unknown benefactors who oppose our influence. Elena sighed. She had hoped that their example would be enough to inspire universal change, but the galaxy was vast and old habits died hard. There would always be those who preferred the old ways of conquest and domination. Captain, came Marcus Chen's voice over the intercom. We're receiving a priority transmission from the Tau Cetai system. It's Admiral Harrison of the Earth Defense Fleet. Elena made her way to the bridge, which had evolved into something that resembled a living organism as much as a command center. Holographic displays grew from the walls like crystalline flowers, showing real-time information from across their expanding network of allied worlds. Admiral Harrison's weathered face appeared in the central display, his expression grim. "Elena, we have a problem. Long-range sensors have detected a massive fleet approaching from beyond the galactic rim. The ships, they are not like anything in our databases. We estimate at least 10,000 vessels, each one larger than a Vorthak dreadnought." Elena felt a chill run through her, and the ship's consciousness shifted into a more defensive posture. How long until they reach inhabited space? 8 months, maybe 10 if they maintain current velocity. Elena, these aren't just warships. Our xenobiologists believe they're entire mobile civilizations. Whoever they are not here to explore or trade. Through her connection to the ship, Elena accessed sensor data from Earth's deep space monitoring stations. The approaching fleet was indeed massive, a dark cloud of vessels that seemed to consume light itself. The technology's signatures were completely alien, utilizing principles of physics that their greatest scientists couldn't understand. "They are not like the others," the ship observed, its consciousness analyzing the data with superhuman speed. "These beings do not simply conquer. They erase. Every world they have touched shows no signs of life, not just the inhabitants, but the very concept of life itself. The erasers," Velcathan said quietly, having arrived on the bridge. "My people have legends of them. Beings from beyond the rim who view life itself as an infection to be cleansed from the universe." Elena closed her eyes, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. The alliance they had built was still fragile, still learning to work together. Many of their member worlds had limited military capabilities, and even their combined fleets would be vastly outnumbered by the approaching threat. But as she opened her eyes, she saw something that gave her hope. Her bridge crew, human, Vorthek, Centauri, and species whose names she was still learning to pronounce, all looked at her with the same expression of determined resolve. They had chosen to stand together, and they would face this new threat the same way they had faced every challenge, as one people, united by something stronger than fear. "We need to evolve again," the ship said, and Elena could feel its consciousness reaching out across space, touching the minds of every alliance member. "We need to become something that can protect not just our worlds, but the very concept of life itself." "Then let's get to work," Elena said, her voice carrying across the Alliance's communication network to every member world. "We have 8 months to prepare for the greatest threat the galaxy has ever faced. We're going to need every ship, every mind, every heart united in common purpose." She paused, feeling the ship's agreement flowing through her. "They call themselves erasers, and they think life is something to be eliminated. Let's show them what happens when life refuses to be erased." Across the galaxy, on worlds that had known only slavery and conquest for centuries, beings who had never dared to hope began to prepare for war. But this would be unlike any conflict in galactic history. This would be a war fought not for territory or resources, but for the right of life itself to exist. The defiant spirit began its final transformation, growing not just in size but in purpose. It reached out to every Alliance vessel, every space station, every planetary defense grid, creating a network of consciousness that spanned light years. What had begun as a single ship fighting for survival had become something unprecedented, an entire civilization united as one living entity, ready to defend the galaxy against those who would see it dead. In the depths of space, the Eraser fleet continued its inexorable approach, spreading a darkness that had consumed 1,000 galaxies before this one. But for the first time in their existence, they were approaching something that would not simply resist them. They were approaching life that had learned to fight back like the magnificent, terrible, beautiful beast it had always been meant to be. The final battle for the soul of the galaxy was about to begin.